Well, good morning, folks. This is Billy Trouch with the Tennessee Department of Revenue's Taxpayer Services Division. And you won't see my face today because I'm having equipment issues. So too bad for that. But we do have two other lovely faces for you to see today. Miss Katie Julian in our taxpayer education section, as well as Deirdre Smith, who is one of our call center managers in taxpayer services. So we're glad to have these fine ladies with us today to talk about these business tax changes that are coming up for the current filing year and for years beyond. We're glad that so many of you have attended today. We're going to call to your attention, first of all, that we've put a few things in chat already to let you know that we do have resources out on our website. We've got some other, the recording itself that we're making of this presentation today will be posted to our website either later today or tomorrow. And we just wanted to let you sit back and relax and absorb some of these changes. And then we'll obviously give you a chance to ask some questions that we may not cover in the regular part of the presentation. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Miss Katie, who will direct you with some other logistics, and then we'll go into our presentation. So take it away, Katie. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ghost Billy over there. We're sad we can't see your face today.
It's probably better for everybody that you're not.
Well, welcome everyone to this month's tax webinar that Tennessee Department of Revenue is presenting on business tax law changes. Lots happened this year, y'all, with legislation that's very taxpayer and business friendly. Today, we will just be talking about the business tax aspect of it. I will let you know that if you were part of our webinar in, was it July, Jeff Foster presented on legislative updates. You can find out more information on the other Tennessee Works Tax Act, like franchise and excise changes, sales tax changes, some other changes, if you want to watch that video in our webinar video archive. But we're just going to be focusing on business tax, big business tax change that happened this year. Also want to say, this is just interesting, I think we are setting a record this month for attendance with our webinar. So lots of people joining us. As Billy said, we'll keep the chat off while we're going through these slides, but then as soon as I'm done with the presentation part, which is actually kind of short because pretty to the point, we'll have lots of time, hopefully, for questions that you can put in your chat, which will open up after we're done with the slide part. And like Billy said, you can download a PDF of this presentation, which will have links to some of the hyperlinks that we've got in here. You can click on them from the PDF, and there's a link to it up in the chat. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Just some basics on the Tennessee Works Tax Act that Governor Lee signed into law after our General Assembly session. It is touted as the largest tax cut in Tennessee's history. Supporting families, there's big grocery tax holiday and paid family leave credit. Boosting small businesses, $150 million in tax cuts for small businesses. So we're real excited about that. And ensuring future economic growth. You can find out more about all of the different aspects of the Tennessee Works Tax Act on our website. There's a whole page dedicated to this. There's the link that you can see, tn.gov/revenue/Tennessee-Works. But the main business tax changes, the biggie is that this new law increases the business tax filing threshold to $100,000 in gross annual sales per jurisdiction. That was previously $10,000. If you made $10,000 in gross sales, you had a business tax filing requirement. Now that's $100,000. For smaller businesses, we hope that that's really takes a burden off of you to not have to mess with filing a business tax return every year. Another change to business tax, and we're not going to be talking about this today, but just FYI, the Tax Act reduces the business tax rate on Class 5A taxpayers from 0.3 to 0.1% is the tax rate now. And the Tennessee Works Tax Act expands the business tax manufacturing exemption to include storage facilities that are within a 10-mile radius. You can find out more information about the specific business tax changes also in the important notice 23-08. And if you're in the PDF or access that later, you can follow that. That's an actual hyperlink if you want to check that out. So they're estimating that this increase in the business tax filing threshold is going to affect approximately 140,000 businesses in Tennessee that will no longer need to file a business tax return. Um, the local jurisdictions get a cut of business tax. You know, as you may know, we work really closely hand in hand with the city and county officials all throughout the state of Tennessee. The amount of revenue that they will be getting from business tax is going to be bumped up a little bit in an effort to hold those local jurisdictions harmless and not affect their budgets. So just a little bit of information there. So this is a graphic that explains the business tax and licensing relationship and how this new threshold works into that. So on the far left side, annual gross sales. Nothing changes about under 3,000. That's considered just kind of a hobby or not required to have a business license, not required to file business tax, never was, and therefore obviously no renewal needed. So the middle section that says 3,000 to 100,000. This is what used to be 3,000 to 10,000, but now big change. That cap there is 100,000. You just need a minimal business license and no business tax filing requirement to renew that minimal business license, which has always been the case. To renew it, you just renew directly with your county clerk. And then if your business is located within a municipality, you'll also need to get that minimal license from your city clerk and then renew that one directly with the city clerk. So renewal of a minimal business license has always been directly with the clerks. The big change is just that is that $100,000 threshold. So if you make between 300,000 and 10,000 and 100,000, I can't talk, sorry, annually, no business tax filing. Over 100, you'll need a standard business license. You'll need to file business tax. And when you file and pay business tax, we send clearance over to the clerks and they will then renew your license. Nothing changes with that process. It's just that that threshold has changed. So if you're a business that grosses over 100K annually, nothing changes for you. No rate change unless you're a 5A, but just nothing changes if you're a larger business. And please note too that threshold is going to be based on total gross receipts per jurisdiction. So if you have maybe multiple smaller type businesses within a jurisdiction, you're going to want to add the gross receipts together for all those to see if you meet that threshold to need to file and obtain that standard license. So how is this going to play out? Oh, actually, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Got ahead of myself. Another aspect of the Tennessee Works Tax Act is that it does increase the gross sales threshold for contractors who perform contracts in Tennessee from 50,000 to 100,000. That used to be 50 for contractors was that filing requirement. Now that's 100,000 as well. Contractors will only be considered to have established a deemed location in a given jurisdiction if their annual gross receipts are more than that 100,000. So that's a pretty big change for Class 4 contractors. Break that down just a little bit more here. If you're a contractor who has between 0 and $29.99 in annual gross sales, I can't imagine there is a contractor that falls in that category, but don't need a license. And obviously no tax there. If you make between 3,000 and 100,000 in gross sales, and that goes for whether it's your domiciled location, which is where your contracting business is based out of, whether it's home based or wherever you're domiciled, the business is domiciled between 3 and 100,000, or any deemed location. And a deemed location is basically where a location where you're not necessarily located or based out of, but where you're doing a job. That threshold has been raised to 100,000. And I won't go into this in detail right now over the state level tax and municipal level tax, but if you're a contractor and this applies to you, that information stays the same. It's just that the receipts under 100,000, that's the new threshold, is 100,000. And we do have a great webinar that's dedicated to business tax for Class 4 contractors. You can find that in our webinar video library. Of course, in that webinar, we're just talking, the threshold information has changed, and I can't remember if we've updated the PDF of that just to make note of this. I think we have, but so that the threshold part's new, but everything else is the same. Over 100,000 in gross sales, if you're a Class 4 contractor, you'll need a standard license from your domicile location if you do over 100 and where you're based, or over 100,000 where you've got a job located, you'll need a standard license. Receipts of over 100,000 are reported on the return for the location where those receipts are generated. Pretty cut and dry there. I will say, and we talk about this in the contractor business tax for contractors webinar, that some jurisdictions may require you to obtain a license even if you don't meet these thresholds in order to pull permits. We're just talking about business tax law here and what would require you to file a business tax return if you're a contractor. You may have to get a standard license if they want you to. You don't want that to hold things up, but out of state Class 4 contractors, same goes for them. That threshold has been raised to 100,000. If you make under 100,000 and you're an out-of-state Class 4 contractor, you don't need a license, again, unless they're making you pull one for permit or get a license to pull a permit. No state level taxes due and no municipal level taxes due. If you gross over 100, you'll still need a standard license in the county and or city. Report the state level or county level tax on the return for the county location and report the municipal level tax on the return for the city location. So those thresholds have changed for contractors. Okay, so this is where the rubber meets the road with how does this new threshold affect you or your client if you're a CPA. So we've got a little chart here. If your gross receipts for fiscal year 2023 are less than 100,000, and you know that, there is something you can do right now. I will say, please don't wait until Monday, April 15th, 2024 to do this. If you know now, or if you know any time between now and then, it'll be a lot easier to get that done. You'll get through to us on the phone a lot easier than if you try to do this on the day of the filings due. But if you are going to be grossing less than 100,000 for fiscal year 2023, and let me also stop for a moment and say that this Tennessee Works Tax Act and the threshold for business tax, it goes into effect for this fiscal year, the current one that we're in. So
Hey,
making
Kate,
less than 100.
can I say
Sure.
something real quick
Yes.
as a ghost person? So anyway, you're exactly right. It does take effect for the year of 23, but let's be very clear and say that it's for the tax periods. This is in the law, by the way, for tax periods ending 12/31/23 or later. Okay. So there could be some people that are still on different fiscal years, different other
Right.
businesses that still have fiscal years ending here in September or October or whatever. So,
Right.
yes, those people are still under the old 50,000 and all this 10,000 and all the stuff that you were
Good
talking about
point.
before, Katie. So that remains the same for their current filings. But of course, most people on here are dealing with clients or business owners that are actually December year-end filers too. Okay.
Great. Thank you for pointing that out, Billy. So in the middle row here, if you know that you're going to be grossing more than 100,000 for tax year ending 12/31/23 or later, then all you need to do is what you've always done, file and pay business tax, right? By the deadline. And then we will send clearance to your clerk, who will then issue your renewed license. Nothing changes. If you are not sure, if you're going to need to wait a little bit longer, if you're teetering right close to the threshold of 100,000 or just not sure yet, nothing you can do if you're not sure right now, but as soon as you know, then you will either contact us, and let me make a special note of that, requesting closure of the account. Gosh, I kind of skipped over that top row, didn't I? I squirreled out. Let me go back up to this top row of if you know you're making less than 100,000. You'll contact the Tennessee Department of Revenue, contact us and say, I need to close my business tax account. At that point, we're going to communicate with the county and city clerks and let them know that you don't have a business tax filing requirement, that we're switching you in our system to filing not required. And then when your license expires, the license that you have currently expires, you'll need to then visit your local city or county clerk to renew it then. So if you're a 12/31 fiscal year, which is most typical, um, your filing is due typically on April 15th, but that license, your business license doesn't expire until 30 days after that, which is going to be typically May 15th. So if you are going to be grossing less than 100,000, contact us to close your account. You'll go in May to renew that your business license with your clerk. And again, I already talked about the middle row here. If you're making more than 100 in gross receipts, nothing changes. You're just going to file and pay.
Hey, Katie,
I hear
ghost
you.
person again. So,
Yes.
can you go back to the slide about the $3,000 deal? I want to point out something just very
This
quickly.
one?
Yes, thank you. So, so if you look at this, this is talking about the licenses being required and all that too. I think it's very important to note that when we're making these changes to your account, assuming that you're under the new 100,000 threshold, that we're adjusting your license requirement. And what does that mean? It means exactly what Katie just said. It means that there's going to be another action that you're going to have to take in the future that's different than what you were taking. Because when you were filing your return and making your payment through the 10-tap system, we were noting that and sending that information to the county clerk. Well, if you're not doing that anymore, then the shifting of responsibilities sort of goes over to you. Okay. And what that means is when that license gets ready to expire, and typically licenses that in fact licenses that are for December year-end filers always expire on May 15th of the following year. Okay. So what that means is you have to go to the county clerk, and if you're in a city, the city clerk, to receive your new minimal activity licenses when you're between the 3,000 and the 100,000, and they are $15 a piece. And you, excuse me, one thing that is very important to know is that state law does require that you have a business license if you are grossing anywhere from $3,000 higher. Okay, so don't forget that, and that you just got to know. You got to know that you've got something else or something different that you have to do. Okay. And then Katie and I are going to talk about, and Deirdre too, are going to talk about what this really means here in just a minute to this year of 23 filing. But I just wanted to point that out because the license part of that is a requirement of law. Don't forget that, okay? Because you don't want to be outside the law. You must always have a current, valid, and up to date business license if you're making $3,000 or more in gross income in the state, okay? I just want to point that out. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Billy. Okay, so back to if you're not sure about your gross receipts, nothing you can do but wait for now. But as soon as you do know that you're going to be possibly less than 100 in gross receipts for the 12/31/23 year, then contact us to close the account. Or if you're going to be over, again, nothing changes. Just file and pay by the deadline. Nothing changes there. I want to reiterate here that we will be communicating all closures with the local offices so that they know, and will a lot of them reach out to the license holders in their jurisdictions to say, hey, you need to renew. If you are closing your account and therefore switching to a minimal, they'll probably or likely send you an email or a letter saying, hey, it's time to renew your minimal license in the spring. You may get correspondence like that. Again, to reiterate what Billy said, also your current license, if you do close that account now, if you're expecting to gross less than 100, yeah, that current license will be good until what's typically May 15th, but 30 days after the business tax would have been due. Okay, this kind of just reiterates everything we just went over, but an added thing here, one of the things we're doing is in October, next month, if you have a business tax account already established and you have in the past grossed under 100,000, we're going to be sending a letter to those business tax account holders and letting them know that there's a new law and a threshold change. I'm sorry to stop here. I just got a message that some of you may not be seeing the slides. I'm not sure why that would be. Let me check something real quick in my settings. So we've had some calls that they're not seeing the slides. So
Katie, it looks okay on my end. It could just be
yeah,
a
me too.
connectivity problem with
Mhm.
their particular situation, I think.
If you need to log out and log back in, that might help. But if you're on here and you can't see these slides, we will be posting a video of this webinar to our website. And I hope that the video would be showing the slides. Since I can see them, I think the video would show them. But if we had to re-record it for some reason, we would do that
And
too.
and Katie, we're getting some thumbs up from participants here. It looks like they may be
I know.
giving
Yeah.
us the okie dokie, so they're good. Okay,
Yeah.
so thank
Okay.
you.
I'll just plug along then. Keep going. Hopefully you can see the slides. Okay, so we are sending a letter to business tax account holders that previously have fallen close to that 100,000 about this new threshold, letting you know that you can contact us to close your account. So if that applies to you, be on the lookout for a letter from the Tennessee Department of Revenue soon. That letter, we've seen some drafts of it. I believe it's going to be going out here in the next couple weeks. So between now and April, and now this is for people that have a 12/31/23 fiscal year in. Businesses grossing under 100 for fiscal year ending 12/31/23 need to reach out to us and close it. I'm going to say this again, and I'll probably even say it again before we're done today. Please do this before April 15th because there's just going to be some wait times. We have a really awesome call center that gets right to your calls. If you email us, if you call us, it's really easy to get through, except for on April 15th. So that's just the nature of the beast, right? But April 15th is typically when you would have to file and pay business tax, right? So you want to do it before then. If you're going to be grossing over 100, please file and pay by April 15th so you don't have penalty and interest. Nobody wants that. And again, the business licenses expire 30 days after the tax deadline, the filing deadline. So if you're closing your account due to this new threshold, but keeping your business open, you'll need to go directly to your county clerk to get a minimal license, which is $15 annually in May. Okay, so just a few FAQs that pretty much reiterate what we've already talked about, but just to drill it into you, and then we'll go through these and then we'll open up the chat. So get your questions ready regarding this new law change. Okay, so I currently have a business tax account and feel confident that my gross receipts will be under 100K. Contact Tennessee Department of Revenue to close your business tax account before the filing deadline, and then we're going to inform your local clerk. Your business license will be valid. The one that you've got with you right now that you're looking at will be valid until the expiration date, which again is May for most licenses. And at that point, you'll need to visit your local clerk, city and or county, or definitely county, but not all cities have business tax, business license. But you'll need to visit them to renew that license in May. Okay. I currently have a business tax account, but I'm not sure if my 2023 gross receipts are going to be over 100 or not. Just wait until you know whether they're going to fall over or under. If they end up falling under 100, contact us to close your account and then renew directly with the clerk next spring. If it's going to be over 100, Nothing changes, nothing in the process changes. You'll just file and pay business tax by the deadline, and we will send that information to the local officials who will then renew your license. This is that same thing. I currently have a business tax account and confident that my gross streets will be over 100. Just do what you've always done. File and pay business tax, and that'll renew your license. What happens if I close my business tax account? If I fail to close my business tax account and do not file or pay before the deadline, number one, your business license will not be renewed until you close that business tax account and then renew directly with the clerk, or you file and pay business tax. And if it's late, again, you're going to have penalty and interest, and that's no fun. Just the biggest thing I can impress upon you is figure out where those gross sales are going to fall for your business for the tax year ending in 12/31/23. As soon as you figure that out, and if it's going to be under, reach out to us. All right, while I'm talking about these resources real quick, I'm going to go and open up the chat for you guys. Wrong place. Now you will be able to chat with us, with the panelists. It doesn't go to the whole group, just for confidentiality purposes. But if you've got any questions regarding this law change, now is the time to put it in the chat, and we'll be looking at those here in just a minute. But I want to point out some resources to you. As always, go to tn.gov/revenue. And you can see here, tax resources is a great place. And if we've got some time later, I can take you directly over there. The tax guidance section has all of our tax manuals, which are updated and are great resources. If you've never been to the tax manuals, they have been updated to reflect these new changes, all the new laws. So if you have more questions about, just basic questions about business tax, the business tax manual is fantastic. Revenue Help also addresses the Tennessee Works Tax Act changes and lots of great questions and help articles over in Revenue Help. And from the homepage, if you click on Taxpayer Education and Outreach and then Tax Webinars, that is where you will go. It's where you most likely went to register for this, whether you might have had a direct link over there, but if you registered for this webinar, this is how you got there, the tax webinars page. That is where that webinar video library is, where you can view all of our webinars, including the one that we're doing right now, which will be loaded later today or tomorrow. But some people don't see it there. You have to scroll to the bottom when you get to tax webinars. The registration link for the current webinar is always going to be at the top. Then scroll to the bottom of that page and you'll see the webinar video library. We're going to land on this screen on this slide for a while we start answering your questions. Billy and Deidre, or voice of Billy.
Voice of Billy is here.
Join us, please, so
and
we
Deirdre,
can.
I'm sure, is located nearby as well.
Yes, I'm here.
But yeah,
Okay.
so here's our website, our email address if you want to put in a support ticket or a question, revenue.support@tn.gov, and our amazing call center with which Deidre is in charge of, 615-253-0600, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 Central Time. Unless it's tax day, you can get right in with a person if you've got any questions. We love to help. So. And again, I want to just make note, any account specific questions you have, we're not going to be addressing those during this webinar either. So definitely email us if you've got those, or call us if you've got account specific questions. So,
yeah.
All right, what's going on over here in chat, Billy and Deidre?
Everything. Wow, the world
Looks
has
like it.
opened up. So
Yeah.
anyway, thanks for your different chat messages. We will not get to all of these. I would love to, but we can't. It's just not possible. It's 3 against like way more than 1,000. So you guys win. So anyway, Joseph had an interesting question I saw in here. Can we send a list of clients that will need to have their accounts closed? Yes, you can. You can email those to us, and that would be great to do. What I might ask you to do, if you have a lot of clients, let's say you had 200 clients, maybe you don't send us 200 at the same time. But if you can break it into little smaller pieces, that would be more helpful. The reason I say that is because the folks that answer our emails are fantastic, and we love the work that they do. But sometimes it can get to be a bit overwhelming. So if we had to plow onto one particular thing for hours upon end, it might take us a little bit too long. And we like to try to get to as many people as we can on a timely manner or in a timely manner. So if you can do us that favor, that would be fine. But if you do provide us that information, be very specific. Make sure you're giving us the exact account numbers and that you're indicating that they are going to still need a minimal activity. I guess in theory, there are people that are registered with us that have less than $3,000 worth of income. They really don't need anything. We just really need to close them completely out. Okay, so that's a little different story too. So there's the closure of the entire account because they don't even have gross income that's as much as $3,000, or the conversion of the account over from a minimal act or from a standard license to a minimal activity. But Katie, one thing we need to really bring up in detail, and maybe we didn't push it, or at least maybe I might have been the ghost that was sleeping or something. I don't know. But so for the year of 23, like Katie mentioned, we are sending out this letter. And oftentimes joke that Department of Revenue letters are like magic letters that sometimes people don't read or understand. Okay. Uh, we all get a lot of mail, that's for sure. But at the same time, when we send the letters out, it's an attempt to try to get somebody information and then actually action. Okay. So if you do have a business, or if you are a tax preparer that has clients, the best thing you could do is to read the letter or have the client read the letter and understand that there's something new that's going on and that an action is probably going to be needed from this targeted group. Like Katie said, maybe even 140,000 businesses out there that need an adjustment, right? So we would rather do this sooner than later. And Katie mentioned it, I know. She said, hey, how about not waiting till April 15th to figure it out? Excellent. Best advice ever, right? So we would much rather do like Joseph said in the chat here, send us a list of clients. Let's knock this stuff out. Do you need to wait on letters? No, you don't need to, as long as we have some really good information from you. Okay. Typically, taxpayers will communicate with us directly, but if we can get tax preparers that have knowledge of their clients that can attest that this adjustment needs to be made, we'll make a note of it and we'll make the adjustment on the account and line things up. Okay. Now, one other thing that we need to really stress is for the tax year of 23, let's say December 31, 23. What happens if, and Katie mentioned it a little bit, what happens if you don't change anything? Okay. What happens if you don't make an action that you really should make? Okay. Again, the Tennessee Works Tax Act is designed to save you money, right? To make it more convenient for you to file and pay or to not file and pay, right? But our commissioner, wisely, in my opinion, decided that we would go ahead and allow taxpayers, if they did not make a change, to go ahead and make a payment of the business tax for the year of 23, December of 23, as they have been doing in the past. Okay. Of course, that would just necessitate another license coming out, just like it always has been, for one more year. And the reason for this decision, and I hope I'm not putting words in his mouth because he's the commissioner, I'm not, but I believe the way I understand it is that we just wanted to make sure that, number one, taxpayers had a good solid method for receiving that new business license, either through the change, which is really what we want people to do, right? Because that's what the law says. We want that to happen. But we also want to make sure taxpayers have that valid license through whatever means possible. And we can reevaluate this next year and see what we need to do transitionally whatever's left over, if you know what I'm saying. Okay. So anyway, you as taxpayers, tax professionals out there, what we want you to do is to actively engage in determining whether you need to make these changes or not. But if you don't make any changes, we're going to still require the filing of the tax return because we don't know what to adjust if you don't tell us what to adjust. Okay, does that make sense? Hopefully so. I'm talking to everybody, but Katie, does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's one key thing. It's going to be sort of unusual this particular tax year coming up, but clearly the goal on this is to make sure everyone has the correct license, as I said before, and if you're a taxpayer, that you're paying your tax just like you always were. And we also do not want people to pay tax to the Department of Revenue that don't owe us tax. So how do you avoid it? You make the change. Make the change, okay? And let us know up front what's going on. And read the letter. That's different, right? Yeah. I did
And
have a
Julie
guy
and
one
Deirdre,
time.
this is, sorry, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say I have a funny story for everybody. I did have a person that I talked to on the phone one time and said, well, I got a letter from the Department of Revenue, actually, he said, I got a letter from the state and I didn't know what it was, so I threw it away. I'm like, hey, okay. If the state is sending you a letter, you might want to open it and read it. So there you go. Just saying. Okay, Katie, I'll be quiet.
I was just going to say this is the biggest change to business tax in over a decade. It's a huge change, and this letter that we're sending out, I mean, information's been on our website for a while, but not that y'all go there all the time in your spare time, right? This letter going out next month is going to be the first big communication we send. We don't know what next spring and the summer is going to look like in terms of maybe a follow-up letter to some taxpayers about this. Maybe when you go to file, there'll be some information on TIN-TAP. Those things are still yet undetermined, but we're going to do everything within our power to communicate with all of our account holders about this change. So it's a big one. It's a big change. I have a question here, maybe many questions about this. I don't know. There's a bazillion questions in here, but it's a great question about, can you renew your license? So let's say you close your business tax account and then do need to renew directly with your clerk. Can you do that online? Jalen asked that question. That is a great question. Some counties, I believe about half the counties have the ability to renew a minimal license online, or not even quite half. I think it's more like 30 counties or so have that ability, but I think that more will be uh, making that available to their customers, that online minimal renewal out of convenience, and given the fact that so many more businesses are going to have minimal licenses due to this new threshold. Cities, I'm not quite sure. We have a meeting with a training with all of the city clerks scheduled for in a few weeks, and um, I'm not sure right now how many of them have that online minimal renewal capability, but hopefully that will be something you can do. But if you are questioning it, you can look online to see, or call your clerk's office, and if they don't offer that and you want them to, maybe hearing from you about that would be helpful.
Right. And Katie, just to piggyback on that for just a second, too, under Tennessee law, the licensing part of business tax, the business licensing part of it, is prescribed under the law to be a local government function. Okay. So what does that mean? That means that the Department of Revenue is willing and able to share data with local governments to help facilitate their process of issuing a license. Now, what does that mean? It could mean, like Katie said, maybe an electronic process for which you could make a renewal through the city or the county. That's up to them. It may require you to visit their office, to call their office, and to quite honestly, for those of you out there that deal with multiple locations, this is a bear. I don't know any other way to say it nicely. It's like the 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle. Um, some of the cities and counties choose to have their standard licenses viewable on TINTAP, which is fantastic. We're glad to provide that as a service to the counties and cities and the business owners, right? But it's their function. They make the decision to post them or not. Some of them issue paper licenses only, either minimal activity or standard licenses. It's very unusual. It's a little hard, quite honestly, but at the same time, we're there to help them. Um, and it is always going to be some sort of an issue, I guess you could say, just because of the way that the law requires the individual licenses to be issued separately and all that. So yeah. I was going to ask Deirdre a question here, and from a call center perspective, the type of calls that we get in the call center regarding business tax. Can you share with everybody sort of what the temperature is about this, and maybe what you've heard or heard taxpayers say, or what do you think about it?
Well, we've had a few calls, not too many, but I wouldn't say it's overwhelming right now. But we have been having calls, and most of them want to know things such as, how do I close out my account? Am I able to close it out on TinTap? Yes, you're definitely able to close it out on TinTap, and we are able to help you and walk you through those steps, as well as you can send an email request to close that out. And we do take those questions over the phone. Our phone number is 615-253-0600. It's the general call center. And we answer most of these questions that you're getting here from the slides and the information that you received from Miss Katie and Billy. We definitely talk about these things, and we get these questions because everybody wants to know how this is going to affect them. How am I going to be able to complete my business or to conduct business if I don't know if I need what type of business license I would need in order to complete that? There's also questions of such as if I'm a new business and I just started within the last couple of months, and I don't know if I'm going to make that $100,000 threshold, but I seem to be close to it. What you'll do is you'll just watch those numbers and watch those figures, and if you get close to it, just go ahead and contact us. We're here to help you and guide you through registering and making sure that you get everything set up correctly. I had another question. Let me see if I can find it. It was asking about what happens if I file and I didn't make the $100,000 threshold. It's okay. We'll definitely make sure that if you do file and you did make that threshold, hopefully we can get more information on kind of how that will deal. But usually we'll go ahead and renew you everything for you. And if you have any questions or need that license, we'll make sure that we get that over to the clerk so you can get that license. But we'll definitely be with you during every process that you have when it comes down to it. And contacting us is not an issue. We're here to help you guys.
And Deirdre, one thing that maybe Katie brought up here, and in general conversation as well, is timing is everything. So in other words,
Yeah.
we've received their 2022 business tax return, and that was fine, I'm sure, by this point. But the 23 return is coming up now. So when we make these changes and adjustments to these different locations and/or accounts, we'll need to make them relative to closing them out as of 12/31/22. Okay, in other words, the previous tax year, if there's not a tax requirement for the 23 tax year. So that's the kind of thing that our technicians that answer the phones or the emails and things of that nature, that's the kind of thing we pay attention to. So that's why I'm, excuse me, when you're looking at business tax, you're looking at gross receipts by jurisdiction. Let's be careful. Let's be careful about this, like Katie said, by jurisdiction on an annual basis. So that's super important to look at when you're making this determination too. And by the way, one thing real quick, let's say you made a mistake and you're like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have closed that. I got to open it back up. Let us know. fix it for you right away. No problem. Takes, I don't know, what, 30 seconds, Deidre?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. We'll fix you up.
Exactly.
Which answers the question I'm seeing a lot in here in the chat. What if your receipts go up and down over? What if they're going to be under this year, but you expect them to be higher next year? Same thing. It's just a phone call to us.
But that's
Um,
been, Katie, honestly, that's been the
it's
way it's
always the
been
case.
forever. I mean, when it was at 10,000, you were just dealing with, is it over 10,000 or not? Now we're just using the word 100,000 versus that. So it's always been that way, and it'll continue to be that way too. Um, yeah. So and by the way, as we're recording this today in September of 23, this is the information that we have as of today. Um, if things change, we will certainly let taxpayers know. I anticipate that we will reevaluate the situation next filing season to determine where we are, where taxpayers are, and what the needs of our taxpayers are based on what the law says. Again, the whole idea on this is to make sure that taxpayers who pay tax and need to pay tax do so, and the ones that do not need to pay tax do not. Okay. We're in the business to get it right, and that's what we want to do. Okay, so we'll help you with that, but it's going to be a little unusual this particular filing season.
Y'all, I put a link. Lots of people saying they're wanting the link to that PDF. I posted it in the chat, the link directly over to this PDF, and I also put a link to the important notice in the chat.
I was just looking at some of the other questions. There's a lot of questions. Boy, you guys
There
are full of
are a
questions.
lot of questions.
Imagine that. But
I
the
think
phone number to
Get into a lot of
contact us to close a license. Well, you're talking about closing an account. We don't really close a license. So it's on the screen. There you go. I'm scanning here too, guys.
Lots of questions about, do I have to close my account? No, you do not. If you're under 100, you can keep filing and paying if you want to, by all means.
Right,
It's not
you can
required.
do that, and that's one of the things I told you that our commissioner and staff had decided was best for this particular year, so that we could ensure that money is going to the local governments and that taxpayers are not severely inconvenienced by the change and some other rationale behind that too. So, still, in my opinion, it's still better to get it right and to do the right thing and to not overpay your taxes unnecessarily. Okay. But the method is available to continue in the same way for this year.
From Gary, is a manufacturing company required to have a business license and pay business tax? A lot of manufacturers are going to be exempt, but I would refer you to our business tax manual. I'll put a link in the chat to it to see if that would apply to you.
Let me comment on that too, Katie. There was a part of that law change this year too that benefited our manufacturers even more. And you are correct. There's a special rule in the law, excuse me, that says that manufacturers are not subject to business tax when selling from their manufacturing location. But this past year, they changed that a little and said, okay, if you've got locations that are within a 10-mile radius of the manufacturing location, like let's say warehouses and other stuff where sales may be coming from too, those are also exempt, because we used to have to say, because the law said so, that even if it was next door and the street address is off by 2 digits, those sales are taxable. Well, we don't have to say that anymore, thank goodness. So that 10-mile radius is part of the law now.
This is a good question that I'm actually not 100% sure on. So Deirdre or Billy, for clients for someone who is going to fall under and they close their account, when do they need to go to their local clerk's office to renew their license? Can they start doing that? Do y'all know? Can they start renewing? directly with the clerk as early as January, February, March? When is there a,
They could do
okay.
that as far as that goes. I think now would be a little too early. That
Yeah.
seems like it's way too far ahead. But the current license that each business has based on their prior filing has a expiration date on it. Typically, May 15th of 24 would be a great example for that. Okay, so so based on that, sometime before May of 24 would be a good idea. I'll speak for the clerks right now, who are good friends of ours, and we talk to them every day. Please don't wait until April 15th to visit the clerk's office. I say April 15th, I mean May 15th to do that because why would you wait in a line? Why do you
Some of
go
us are
at the
procrastinators, Billy. Some of us
well,
just
we don't
like to
want you
do
to do
that.
that, Katie.
No,
We
we
want you
don't.
to be
We do not.
proactive, Katie.
Uh,
Okay.
Preaching to my own choir there. No, for your
Uh,
sake and for the clerk's sake, and for it's a
yeah,
win-win to not wait.
seriously though, if you're thinking March, April, like that, that's probably a really good time to do it. I'd say. I think that'd be fantastic. Okay.
A question from Barry, I'm sorry, about a clarification question about contractors. If a contractor has 100,000 or more in sales, but not 100,000 in a specific city or county, they would only file under their physical business. Barry, I'm going to refer you also to our business tax manual because there are so many ins and outs to how that works, and it kind of depends on if where those receipts will be, what return those receipts would be included on, depending on if they're inside of a municipality or not. Just lots of ins and outs. If you have questions about contractors, there's that webinar we told you about from back a few months ago, which of course, keep in mind the threshold was different then, but all the rest of the law stayed the same.
I'll
Or the business tax
I'll
manual.
give a generic answer for that too. And you're right, the business manual does have a lot of examples. The if you're talking about an in-state contractor, somebody who's based here in Tennessee, if they do not exceed that 100,000 in these other locations and they're doing maybe, let's say 60,000, okay, under the new law, basically those gross receipts go back to their home location in Tennessee and they're taxed at that home location. That's the answer to the question.
But if their home location happens to be in an unincorporated area,
That would be
then
like a county, as an example.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, they're
exactly. You
not
would
in
just go to
if
that
their home is
county.
not in a municipality and they have receipts uh, in a city outside of theirs, there's kind of a special rule about that. Those receipts that took place in that city don't go to wouldn't go to if they're not
Mhm.
domiciled in a city, in a municipality, then they would kind of
That's
go to
correct. And
the,
the reason for that is that the legislature wanted the class 4 contractors that we're talking about here to have to split this up among all the different jurisdictions where they're
mhm.
actually doing activities because quite honestly there's a lot of money in that, and they wanted all the localities to be able to participate in that, and that's why there's a special rule for the contractors, or special laws rather.
The business tax manual really has a great, because contractor rules are pretty confusing. I have to kind of refresh myself on them periodically. The manual has great examples and really breaks down. If you're a contractor, you work with contractors, go to our manual. A question about what is the definition of gross receipts, and a few
mhm.
questions I saw in there about what about if we have some non-taxable services and stuff. In our manual, I'm reading from it directly right here. A business's gross sales or gross receipts are comprised of all the business's locations sales without any deduction whatsoever. So basically, it is just all your receipts, and then of course, if you have some non-taxable things, there are some. I'd point you to our manual for that as well. There are some services that are not taxable. For example, just a few, and some other things. We're talking about taxable sales here, and most everything is subject to business tax and business license in Tennessee. Of course, keeping the threshold in mind. But if you make over 3,000, you probably need a business license, right, Deirdre?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes.
and I think these ladies would agree with me too that don't get sales tax and business tax mixed
Mhm.
up. That
Mixed
we
up.
get those questions
Mhm.
all day long,
Yeah.
and it's typical. It's understandable, right? But sales tax law is way different than business tax law. Okay.
And don't get business tax and franchise and excise tax mixed up
Oh
either, right?
goodness, no.
On that note, and since we are getting to the end of the hour here, if you do have some questions, kind of some basic questions about maybe you're a new business and you are still confused about what's the difference between business tax and franchise excise tax and what's the deal with sales tax and do I need to charge it on what I sell or do or not, we have a quarterly new business workshop that is great. We've got one coming up on October 4th. You'll go to Taxpayer Education and Outreach from our homepage and click on new business workshops there. Next month's webinar is going to be a big one, filing the sales tax return. We had this webinar a couple years ago, but so much has changed in sales tax law. A lot changed this year with the Tennessee Works Tax Act and just over the last couple years. So we're kind of updating that and redoing that filing the sales tax return webinar. That'll be a really good one. I'll have the link for you to register for that here shortly, later today. On our tax webinars page. And Billy, Deirdre, do y'all have anything else to add before we sign off here?
Just to know that you can definitely contact the general call center if you have any more questions. If we didn't get to your questions today, definitely contact us. We'll be happy to help you and answer any questions and guide you in the right direction so we can ensure that everybody understands what's going on with this change.
Also,
Absolutely.
one weird thing that Deirdre's group does is they answer the phone. They answer the actual phone with a human
Yes.
being.
Imagine
Yes.
that.
And we do it pretty quickly, especially this time of year. April 15th, yeah, maybe not so much. Kind of busy, but
We'll answer it, but you might wait for a little while, right?
yeah, it's going to be a
Yeah.
minute for
Yeah.
real. But at the same time, they do a fantastic job. Our folks that do email and all this stuff, and Katie does plenty of other stuff. Katie's like the person that spins 1,000 plates at the same time, so we appreciate what she
Mhm.
does as well. But we
Yes.
thank y'all for being with us today. You obviously have taken your time to be with us and to educate yourself. So please let us know how we can help you. And Katie will bring up this thing about the survey, right?
Yeah, as you exit today's webinar, there'll be a really quick survey. If you could please fill that out, let us know if you've got ideas for future webinars and what you thought of this one. And also, if you are requesting CPE credit, you will do that as question number 4 on this quick survey. Just answer yes there if you need CPE credit. And that's it. Thank you all so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next month for our tax webinar on the last Tuesday of the month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being our special guest, Deirdre. We
Oh,
love
you're
having
so
you.
welcome. Anytime.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.